So we're going to talk about that. Then the other thing I want to talk about today is, now Andrew Tate was not on this group of people having this discussion, but I had to, they only had 5 panelists, and I wanted to round it out to 6 photos. But their topic at hand was Andrew Tate. Because Andrew Tate, like I was worried about, and like we've talked about previously, Andrew Tate is the red pill. Andrew Tate is the manosphere. Andrew Tate is all the things. And so now anytime they talk about men's issues or young men or the new show that just came out in the UK, which is absolutely horrible and of course paints men as problematic because government and everything else has gone feminist, they kind of focus on, you guessed it, Andrew Tate. So I'm gonna be playing some of that interview. I'm not gonna watch the show. I don't want to watch the show because I know it'll get me extremely angry. What happens, Carl Benjamin talks about this for just the briefest of moments, but he's completely right. He says, who are the women that are saying that this young man is bad and that young men are bad and that misogyny and these men that look at Andrew Tate or that listen to men's content, that these young men are being poisoned by the Andrew Tates of the world and the red pill and the manosphere, and they're poisoning the young minds of young men. And Benjamin does correctly identify something. It's the young men's mind are not being led astray by Andrew Tate. The young men's minds are being led astray by the feminist indoctrination and the female powers that be that have gotten into media, social media, and in the UK especially, the education system and the government. And they want to tell all young men they are bad. It's almost like original sin. You are young, you're male, and you're white. Therefore, you are everything that ails this world, and you're toxic and you're bad. And men get this, young men are getting this message from as early on as kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade, where they have to take these struggle session classes, and men are being taught like women, and men are being told that they're bad. And their response is, I'm not listening to you anymore. I don't care what you say. You're a woman. You hate me. I'm going to look for something that tells me that I'm okay, that I'm a good person, that I'm not the root of all evil. But that's what they're trying to do. Let me see if I have Carl on 1 1/4 speed. I'm going to play him just a little faster because he correctly identifies some of this. I'm not going to play, obviously, all 2 hours, but I want to play a couple minutes because he does accurately identify that it is the state causing the problem, not being the answer. And so they want to censor voices out there, whether it be mine or Andrew Tate's or others like it. The UK is big into censoring this right now because they think this will bring the young man back into the hive mind, where the young men won't, because the hive is not built for them. It's built for these feminist women.
I'm absolutely tired of it, because the thing is, this is a real representation of what is happening to young boys all across this country, right? The reign of teachers over the half of the human species that they don't understand and don't care to understand, and now don't need to understand. It's really something that bothers me, because it amounts to a kind of perpetual social prison in which these young men become the inmates and are unable to break free. So let's talk about adolescence then, because this has created many waves in this country, and mostly for the wrong reasons. I mean, just let's initially talk about the frame. Right, look at the poster. I thought it'd be bigger. Okay, no, I can't get that poster any bigger. Right, okay, fine. But let's have a look at the frame. The frame of this is, of course, that the young man is evil. Right, you see him staring through the camera screen, and so the young man is essentially this pale, evil monster waiting to do something monstrous. And in the case of Adolescence, it centers on a 13-year-old schoolboy who's arrested for the murder of a female classmate. Now, so yes, in this case, you have someone who has done something monstrous. But this isn't the normal way that these young men are approached by the system itself, by the institutions. The normal reason these young men are approached and processed like this by the institutions is that they've done something, well, not politically correct. They've done something to offend a school marmish HR harridan. And that doesn't mean that it's bad. That means that it violates their code of conduct.
And now this is the point that he makes that I wanted to talk about a little bit, is that here the teacher, the school marm, as he calls it, the HR harridan, he says, which earlier he describes it's not a Karen because Karens are kind of passive. The HR harridans, as he calls them, are active. They're active political mindset. They're feminists that go out of their way to attack men, to attack boys, to control the minds of these young men. And so as the young men grow up and they don't agree with maybe feminism, they don't agree with the state having all this power, they don't agree with immigration, they don't agree with all the leftist indoctrination that they've put in these schools, these young men are labeled as problematic and dangerous. And that's the point that he talks about, and I'm going to let him expand on this a little bit. But this is the problem, is that, well, these young men don't think like we want them to, so we need to start bringing this indoctrination. We need to start bringing this programming. We need to get their minds right younger and younger and younger. And it becomes not only about politics, but what about environmentalism? Do you know, YouTube at one point said, well, if you discuss this stuff and you don't agree with the message, we're going to remove the content. Not demonetize it, not make it 18 or older or whatever, not put a little message like you see down below it. YouTube will remove it if you're not spreading the same message about the environment. This is what they're doing. They're trying to silence half of the message if the message doesn't agree with the indoctrination. And Adolescence, this TV show, is in essence about that. And one thing that's interesting in the show that he does eventually talk about, but it's about an hour from now, and I'm not going to play it that long, is that there's no man that is helping this young man. There's no man interviewing this young man. There's no one helping this young kid. It's all women basically interviewing and interrogating and talking. It's showing the power of the woman over the young man. And it's done this way so far in the series constantly, where they don't have a masculine representative or a man come in and say, let's handle this. It's always the woman over having power over him.
And that means that they get to sit down. And again, a lot of people saying, well, this is a false representation. We'll get into that in a minute. But actually, it's not. In many ways, this is, I think, a real representation. I think there are many, many young men and boys who have to sit in rooms like this with women like her and without the ability to properly, to even vaguely articulate what the problem is, don't really understand why they act in the way that they act, don't understand why the system is so goddamn unsympathetic to them, and don't understand why they are effectively put through what amounts to psychological torture by these women. And no one has the balls to tell everyone that it should never be a woman doing this to a young boy. She can't know what he feels, and therefore she is an inappropriate person to do this. And if it was a young woman who was acting out in a different way or whatever it is, but this is a very extreme version of this story. Most of the time, this story is he wrote some graffiti on something, and we'll get to how this story, the normal version of this story. It's inappropriate to have this take place because she cannot empathize with him because her world is so completely different to his. Her biological motives and instincts and pressures are so different to his, and the world is structured so differently for her experience than it is for his experience, that this amounts to a form of torture. And the show even shows us this. Investigations at Jamie's school and questioning by a forensic psychologist reveal that Jamie has been deeply disturbed by school bullying via social media, centered on incel subculture. So what?
Now, as he says here, school bullying, social media culture, and incel subculture. That is a tag word that they love to use because one or two men go rogue every decade and hurt a couple of women and they have to paint it. They have to attach it to men. And how can they do that? By using the incel subculture. They've done this before. They've talked about this before. And we've seen it. Articles on, oh, how incels are dangerous and incels are bad. This is a 13-year-old kid. He has nothing to, I mean, he should be an incelibate young man. He's 13. But they have to attach that moniker to this situation. They wrap it all up in a beautiful bow. Men, toxic, incel, red pill, manosphere, Andrew Tate. We can ball this all up together. And then anytime we use one of these keywords, it'll show all this other bad stuff. And if you haven't listened to The Perpetual Inmates of a Social Prison by Sargon of Akkad, it's about 2 hours. It is a long listen to. I listened to it while detailing my car yesterday. And I listened to it on like 1 1/4 speed, like we're listening now. And he brings up many, many, many good points in this. Now, maybe you skip out the last 20 minutes or so, but he is right. We live in a female culture with feminism ingrained into everything. And young men have nothing to turn to. Young men have no escape. And they want to get rid of the escapes from the feminist culture and the feminist government and the feminist school system and everything else by getting rid of and silencing the voices like Andrew Tate and other men's content, because they say we're the cause for the problem without realizing they are not meeting the needs of young men. And so channels like mine and others out there are the answer. And I like this particular video by Sargon for one big reason. Sargon's not in the manosphere and red pill and all this other stuff, but he's starting to identify the things that we've talked about now nigh on 5 to 10 years. We noticed it when it was just a whisper. We noticed it when it was small. We noticed it when it was just in the beginnings. But now that it is a roaring scream permeating through media, through social media, through laws, through government, through school systems, through everything, now other people notice it as well. And they're saying this is a problem. The pinnacle, what we're seeing going on in the UK today is the pinnacle of feminism, because feminism is authoritarianism. Feminism is about control. Feminism is about silencing opposition. Feminism is about dominance. And they always do this where they play victim, like, oh, women have no rights. Women can't do anything. We're held back. Oh, the glass ceiling. Oh, the pay gap. Oh, the pay raise. And the minute we show statistics that show otherwise, they look, oh, the pay gap is due to men working longer hours and men taking more dangerous jobs and men working jobs that women don't want to do and men taking that overtime weekend shift, et cetera, and men not having children and men not doing dick. Oh, that's the reason for the pay gap? Hold on. Do I have? Yeah. And so even though time after time we can show how women are getting higher positions, women are getting higher management positions, women are getting paid more for the same jobs, women are graduating college at a higher rate, no matter how many times we prove this, they crumple up the data, throw it aside and say women. And now UK is going through the end stage, or well, not even the end stages, the beginning stages of this in its full power. And now the government, Stammer over in the UK, is saying we should make this TV show, we should make this shown to children, class kids. We should show this in the government. We should have a mandatory preview of this to explain what's going on with our young men. And here you've got a traditional family man, a husband. You've got, Tommy Lauren? I think that's who they've got on the show. And you've got a gay dude. And basically they're all yelling at Andrew like he doesn't know what masculinity is. I'm going to play this. Let me make sure I have this on 1 1/4 speed as well, just so we can get through it a little bit faster. But he's right. everything that is concerning men is being looked at through the eyes of the feminine position. And none of them can see it. None of them understand it. And he's the only one that properly pushes back against it.
Adolescence on Netflix is currently the biggest show in the world. The drama about a 13-year-old misogynist who kills a teenage girl has been seen by 25 million people so far and was raised by the British Prime Minister in Parliament.
With our children, I've got a 16-year-old boy and a 14-year-old girl, and it's a very, very good documentary to watch, or drama. This violence carried out by young men, influenced by what they see online, is a real problem. It's abhorrent, and we have to tackle it.
I want to respond to that. See, he says young men doing all these destructive things because what they've seen online. That's putting the blame on me. That's putting the blame on Andrew Wilson or the whatever podcast or in Carl Benjamin's last video. That's putting the blame on us. We didn't start this, because I'll tell you what, if you had come to a 20-year-old joker and you showed me Andrew Tate, I would have laughed at it, genuinely. Not because Andrew Tate's a clown or anything like that. I would have laughed at it because I would have said, well, this isn't true. I have no problems getting girls. Even my friends that aren't necessarily that attractive, they have no problems getting girls. We're not treated that unfairly. Like, I have gym class and, yeah, we pull on girls' hair in school and they call us names, and because we were still in a world of normal. That's no longer the case. Now when you show me Andrew Tate's information, I say, yeah, I can see why young men would look towards that. Things have changed in those 30 years since I was in school.
Documentary, as the Prime Minister referenced, it tells the story of young boys who are radicalized by content online. There are references to the manosphere, the matrix, incels, and red pills. Andrew Tate gets a name check. And that part of the show has sparked an outpouring of commentary about the abject horrors of the internet and the crisis of male role models.
Banged by a girl, you sausage.
You're not getting it.
What am I not getting?
Dad, you're not reading what they're doing. It's a call to action by the manosphere. 80% of women are attracted to 20% of men. You must trick them because you'll never get them in a normal way.
Listen to what that guy said, right? It's the manosphere, incel. They got to mix matrix, Andrew Tate, red pill. They've got to squish all those words together. But even in the young man's own language right there, he said 80% of women love chase after 20% of men. Okay, we talk about that statistic, but what is the very last thing that young man says? So you have to trick them. When have I ever said you need to trick women? When have I ever said you need to lie to women? Now, maybe Andrew Tate says something like that, but that's my point. Andrew Tate is not red pill. I mean, he's not the red pill. He's not the manosphere. He's a subset, a portion of it, where many of our channels are saying, don't lie to women. Don't trick women. Don't even bother with women. Don't hate them. Don't put your energy into hating them. Don't put your energy into them at all. Find male friends. Find other things to do with your life. Find a way to be happy and fulfilled and enjoy your life without women. Does that mean attack women? Does that mean hurt women? No, we don't say any of that. They couldn't pull a 10-second clip that didn't lie about what we say. Manipulate and lie women. We have to trick them. That's not what we say. The vast majority of us don't say that.
Well, The Guardian summed up the general tone of the reporting with a headline that said, from the police to the Prime Minister, how adolescence is making Britain face up to toxic masculinity. But is it really? Can it not just be a successful drama that references popular culture, as so many do? Critics of the show say it's another version of the same man-bashing narrative that gave rise to the so-called manosphere in the first place. Well, here to debate all this is the host of The Crucible, Andrew Wilson, the radio host, James Barr, the host of Tommy Laren is Fearless on Outkick, Tommy Laren, and the host of The Determined Society, Sean Fraser. Welcome to all of you. Andrew Wilson, let me start with you, because I've got three sons, 31, 27, 24. I think I brought them up to respect women, to not behave in a misogynist way, and to behave in a pretty decent way generally. But I'm also aware that they've grown up in an era when the likes of Andrew Tate and others have become increasingly dominant in the way that a lot of impressionable young men start to think and view women. And for all that Andrew Tate can say that is positive about getting fit and being successful and competent and so on, there's indisputably a hardcore streak of misogyny that runs through his veins, which I think has been quite damaging to young men. So I'm not all in either way here, but I can certainly see the arguments.
Before he starts, let me just say something. What did you notice? Red pill, manosphere, Adolescence, Misogyny, TV show. Andrew Tate. Instantly. Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate does this. Andrew Tate does that. Andrew Tate says that. Andrew Tate, all the young men. Andrew Tate, Andrew Tate, Andrew Tate. Instantly. Who the cares? Why is Pierce Morgan Andrew Tate, Andrew Tate, Andrew Tate? Because he's the demon. He's the devil. He's an easy target because he's so out there. And he's the most popular one. So they all, well, Andrew Tate says this, Andrew Tate, and they all go to that because he's so easy to use as a destructive force against men's real issues. And I'm not going to put words into Andrew's mouth, but my first words would be, Andrew Tate is not the red pill. Andrew Tate is not the manosphere. Andrew Tate is not men going their own way. He is a sliver of the hundreds of thousands of disenfranchised young men today. But he didn't, unfortunately.
Where do you sit?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that so I watched the show, and it just goes through a typical feminine view, right? So all of these things are always through the prism of the feminine. So young boys, they don't do well at school. They don't do well in school because it's all programmed for the feminine. Stay still, fold your hands, right? Be quiet. Boys are rambunctious. They like to beat each other up. They like to be mischievous. They like to break things. They like to do that kind of stuff. There's no outlet for them to do that stuff. Their teachers are all women, right? There's basically all masculinity is now considered toxic. Basically all of it. The same women who are getting their double shot of espresso on the way over to the school they're about to teach at, they're 24 years old. Sometimes they're banging their own students, right? Hilariously enough. Parliament, the same women who go to Parliament, they vote to send men off to war to stab each other in the face with bayonets. And you're concerned about toxic masculinity. It cracks me up. It's like the brutal savagery of men is a necessary precondition for society to exist. And we just kind of pretend like it's not. And this show should actually be an indictment on the feminine rather than the masculine, because basically masculinity is just punished everywhere, all the time, nonstop. It's no wonder guys like Andrew Tate get so famous in these spaces. I mean, what's the alternative? The alternative is everything must be feminine, tone policing, nonsense like this. It's ridiculous.
All right, James Barr, you were laughing, but I don't think you had a joy
crazy.
What you're hearing.
No, I mean, I don't think you've seen the show. Episode 2 is shot entirely in a school. I didn't see one of the female teachers drinking a double shot of espresso at all. No.
That's his argument. Listen, I want you to hear the counter argument to Andrew's point. I don't think you watched the show. There were no women drinking coffee. Motherfucker, what are you talking about? He used that as an example. That's not the point we're talking about. It would have been the same thing as like, well, a teacher going to school that hangs pride flags on her wall. Well, there were no pride flags in this show. You're missing the fucking bigger context. Well, first of all, there's no coffee. Shut up, Jesus.
None of the teachers were flirting with students. There were male teachers as well. I don't think you're describing the show here. I think you're describing your own insecurities or agenda.
I don't care if there were male teachers in the show. We're talking about real life. 75 to 80% of all teachers are female. Administrators, female. And the men that are in these schools, have you seen some of the videos? They're like you, more feminine than a lot of women.
Gender.
Yeah, so this doesn't contend with the argument. Like, you understand that I'm making an argument, an indictment of society itself, based around my ideas that I'm seeing from this show. That's what I'm actually doing. So if you could contend with the fact that male savagery is necessary for the security of a nation, and that women will indeed vote in the future in parliaments to send men off to war to stab each other in the face at 18 years old with bayonets, perhaps you can contend with that before we start, getting into, well, tone policing is actually good and toxic masculinity is actually bad. It's like, I think there needs to be a little bit more toxic masculinity, or what you consider to be toxic masculinity.
All right, I want to bring Tommy in, because Tommy, you've got a very interesting perspective, I think. You've talked about something different. You call it the pussification of men, which is a great phrase. I'd love you to just explain what you mean by that. But also, you're not a fan of Andrew Tate or the influence he has. So that makes you, I think...
Again, why are we talking about Andrew Tate? Let's talk about the men's issue. Let's talk about men. Let's talk about masculinity. Now all of a sudden it's like, well, let's talk about Andrew Tate. That's not the problem.
An interesting commentator in this area. So just explain, first of all, the pussification of men.
All right, Piers. Well, I think, and I can't see you all, so forgive me if I'm incorrect here, but I think I'm the only female on this panel.
Correct.
So I'm really...
No, the guy next to you is a female.
Anxious to weigh in. Okay, so I think over the last probably 10 years, there has been what I call the pussification of men. It was everything should be about your emotions and your feelings, and men were emasculated, and this whole concept of toxic masculinity warped the minds of a lot of young men. And they felt masculine, they wanted to be masculine, but society was telling them they should be softer, that it was being toxically masculine if you wanted to play sports and chop wood and go to war. And so men were so emasculated and so beat down that then there was this revolution of what was actually toxic masculinity, the Tate brothers and others, which I feel as a female that doesn't represent true masculinity. That to me represents douchebaggery. And as a
Okay, that could be accurate. You want to call them douchebags, that's fine.
woman, I want a strong man who is a protector and a provider that will go to war if need be, that will protect me, protect my family, make money. I see that as being actually masculine. That's like the man that I grew up with, my dad. But what we're seeing now is these young men who look at Andrew Tate and the Tate brothers, and they see somebody who's just quite frankly a douchebag and disrespects women. And because they've been so emasculated, they're like, oh, great, that's a manly man. But that's not right either. So at some point, I think we'll go back to maybe meeting in the middle here. You can be a man who has feelings and emotions, but you can also go to war and protect and defend your family. I'm hoping we can get back there. But the two extremes right now, they're confusing men, and quite frankly, they're leaving women with few choices, and that's the real tragedy here.
Oh, the real tragedy here is women have few choices. Men die in war. Women, children, and wives most affected. See, she properly calls it out. Over the last 10 years, boys were told to be emotional. Boys were told to be in touch with their feelings. Boys were told that chopping wood and doing sports and doing masculine things was bad. She correctly identifies that. What she gets wrong is she doesn't say, and because of that, young men are looking for role models.
You see, I completely agree with you, but Andrew, you were shaking your head quite vigorously. Why?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just more feminine or feminist nonsense, ultimately. And the covert feminism in society is big, especially on the conservative side. So here's what happens, right? Women need to have feminine virtues for men to be pursuing masculine virtues, for you to say things like, well, men, what I want is for men to protect me and I want men to make money. Well, that's great. What that ends up doing is it gives you a set of privilege in society. What do men get? What do men get for doing that for you? What are we getting from women for doing that? Are we getting chaste virgins on our wedding night? No, we're not getting chaste virgins on our wedding night. Are we getting women of great virtue? No, we're not getting women of great virtue. The idea of courtly love is supposed to be done for women of great virtue. Where are they? Well, they're nowhere. And so in modernity, in society, when female conservative influencers say this, it's actually a form of covert feminism. They're saying, I want privilege in society, right? But what is it women are giving to men to get it? What are they?
Tommy's smirking and laughing, but he's exactly 100% right. 100% right. Okay, you want me to go off to war. Maybe get expired. You want me to protect my nation, protect my family, protect my loved ones. You want me to go to war. What am I getting in return? Do I have a loving wife? Sometimes. Do I have kids? Sometimes. Do I have a nation that respects me? No. Do I have a nation that looks out for me when maybe I come back and I'm injured and I'm now considered a veteran of a war? Do I have great medical care? Do I have insurance? Nope. As a matter of fact, one of the highest statistics of men that self-delete are guys coming back from war after protecting their country. What am I getting for my protection and my service and my sacrifice? What do I get? Well, you're getting snarky, narcissistic women that have high body counts and children from two different baby daddies. That's not worth me fighting for. So you want, and he's right about this. He's dead on. Tommy wants a protective man and a providing man, but also I get to do what I want. And I don't have to give you anything because that's I don't know. That's feminism. I don't have to give you anything. I can do whatever I want, but also you need to do these things for me.
Tell me.
Well,
can I please chime in here?
Yes, you can. And then James can, and I'll come to you, Sean.
No, I would love to. I love this whole thing of like, if you're a female conservative and you don't believe that men should be douchebags, that all of a sudden you're a covert
That's not what he said. See, she's putting words into his mouth.
Feminist. Call me a feminist. I really don't give one crap one way or another, but I can tell you this. A lot of these men, these podcast hosts on the right that like to think of themselves as these big masculine men, and what am I getting out of it? I can tell you this.
There's that feminism.
All right, I believe I'm a woman of virtue,
coming
right?
out.
I don't care what you as a woman think is masculine and masculinity. Only from the standpoint of maybe I'd like to date you. What do you find attractive and masculine about me? That's great. But as a man, I don't, just like as a woman, don't you care what I think about women and feminism and what women need? Don't you care what I think about women? No. Okay, then we're even then, aren't we? Feminism's all about, well, who cares what men think? I'm a woman. I'm going to tell you what I need as a woman. Okay, well, masculinity is here's what I am as a man. Here's what I need as a man. I don't give a shit what you think about masculinity. You're not a man. You don't know what we're going through.
Well, I have a husband who's not only a former professional athlete, but is currently a professional baseball coach.
Okay, that's money, and that's money.
Don't you understand that misses the point?
Mine is a man who respects me.
Yeah, that misses the point, though. Like, you're still not contending with the argument that I'm making. I'm saying inside of society, right this second, right, masculinity is not only punished, but also women on the right, covert feminists on the right, are constantly and consistently talking about how they need to have privilege in society. I want men. Their version of masculinity is men who take care of us, men who protect us, men who do all of this. Those are all duties that men have towards women. Great. What are the duties that women have towards men? What are the duties that women have towards anything? What do men get out of this arrangement? What are we getting out of this arrangement? Can you tell me?
I mean,
I would argue that men innately should be protectors and providers.
Hang on one second. Let Tommy
Most men are born that way.
Let Tommy respond to that, and then I'll come to you, Jez. And then Sean, you've been waiting patiently. So
most men are born to be protectors and providers. I can't imagine my dad saying, you know what, to my mom, you know what, I'm not going to be a protector and a provider unless you do this. That's not how real men operate. Real men are protectors and providers, and they marry women who hopefully have some virtue, but also bring a lot to the table as well, that are great mothers, great wives, caretakers of the home. There's nothing wrong with being a traditional wife and mother. You're misunderstanding me if you think that I think that women should just be out doing whatever they want. I think that there are gender roles that should be respected. But I don't think a man needs to get something out of it to be a manly man, a protector, and a provider.
Of course you don't. Of course you don't think a man should get anything out of it, because that means you'd have to do something. That's Andrew's point. I don't think a man should do anything. Men are just born protectors. Men are just born providers. My father, yeah, you're missing the point. I bet your mother and your father, I mean, probably let's say they're in their 70s or 80s. I bet your mom, I bet she came to that relationship with her V card. I bet she did. Or at most, she had that one boyfriend that thought it was going somewhere, and she showed up with a body count of 1. I bet she cooked. I bet she took care of the home. I bet she was a stay-at-home mom for you kids, at least when you were young. Maybe when do you think they met and she was working and kept her full-time job? No, she became a homemaker. She became the cook. I'd almost bet the farm on it. And that's why your father was a protector and a provider, because she was a classic woman, feminine. He was a classic man. We're saying today, not your fucking dad, what do we get today? And she says, I don't think you deserve anything. I don't think you should get anything. I don't think I should have to do anything. Men should just protect. They're born that way. Sounds a whole lot like, well, women were just born to stay pregnant and cook.
But I don't think a man needs to get something out of it to be a manly man, a protector, and a provider. If you think you need to get something out of it, I quite frankly don't consider you a real man.
If you want something in return for protecting and providing for me, you're not a real man.
Yeah, she have nothing. She have nothing.
But we'll discuss in a moment whether Andrew Wilson is a real man.
Piers, I offer nothing. I offer nothing.
You offer me a lot of things, Tommy.
You literally offered nothing, Tommy.
Yeah, that's why I always love having you on the show. You know that. Let's go to a real man, James Barr.
Thank you. I do see myself as a man, and I know that you'll be looking at me thinking, well, you're not. You're wearing makeup. You're wearing colourful clothes. Like, look at me. I'm really camp. My nails are painted.
I mean, they are worrying signs.
You're sat there smoking.
You're a man in the biological sense only. Only. XY chromosomes. That's it. Literally.
A cigarette. I'd love to get a vape out and start drinking a beer, pints with the lads, just connect with you over that. I think that you have some insane opinions on what women are meant to do for you. It's crazy that you don't appreciate that a woman actually gave birth to you.
That never came up in a previous conversation. What does this have to do with giving birth? This is the Mott and Bailey type argument. It's just so lazy. It's so pedantic. You can't have, this is why you can't have real conversations with people like this.
Like, she gave you a womb for 9 months and then looked after you, I would hope, for the beginning of your life. And you're sat there going, what do women owe men? Women don't owe men anything. No one.
And therefore we owe women nothing.
Owes you anything. You have your own life.
Do you understand that if you make an argument and you say that
I'd watch your seminar on how to win an argument.
In a position, if women are supposed to be in a position of privilege where men do A, B, C, and D for them, and then I ask, well, what duties do women have? And you say, well, nothing.
No one said that men need.
Why are men checking out? I don't know why men are checking out. I don't get it.
That's
silly, man.
All right, let me bring in the one person who so far hasn't said a word about this, but has a lot of interesting things to say. Sean, welcome to Uncensored. I think one of the key things of this series that's made it so popular is that anyone who's had young sons knows that they are, if you're not careful, they get exposed to a lot of nasty stuff on the internet. We all know this. And a lot of it is this kind of incel stuff, which I think can be a really malevolent
Notice he uses that buzzword again.
Influence on impressionable young men. And they gravitate to it. And I think that partly what Andrew's getting at, I agree with, in the sense that following the Me Too Time's Up campaigns, which were in many ways, extremely laudable, brought down a lot of very bad men, no question of that. But the pendulum swung so wildly that I think a lot of young men in particular felt completely disenfranchised from society, felt like they were all being treated like a bunch of young Harvey Weinsteins unless they could prove otherwise. They didn't really know what the rules of engagement were with women, with teenage girls anymore, whatever. They lost their way. And by losing their way, they gravitated, I think, to very loud voices on the internet like Andrew Tate, who I think, like I say, he says a lot of stuff I find myself nodding to, and then he'll say this misogynist stuff, which I just despise it. I see no reason why you should ever want to have a relationship with a woman the way that Andrew Tate wants you to, where it's just pure misogyny. Just talk to me first of all about why you think young boys, teenage boys, young men, why they've gravitated to people like Tate. Because I have.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so I think it's, first of all, we got to understand that we have an amazing responsibility as a parent to lead from the home and to have these open conversations with our young children, all right? Whether they're male children, female children, we have to make sure that we're having open door conversations and we are tackling the hard subjects. Because if we don't take care of everything at home, we don't take care of everything in public, like at school, and other forces within society that help raise our children, we always say it takes a village. Well, it certainly does, but it starts at home. And if you cannot have these open conversations and allow your children to be honest and open with how they are feeling about society and the things that they are seeing, they are going to go to misogyny. They're going to go to the Andrew and Tristan Tates of the world, and they're going to learn how to be a man from that. And that is not what society needs. It's not what the world needs. That is not masculinity. It is masquerading as misogyny.
He is correct. Why does he not recognize the rest of the problem? He's a husband. He's a father. He's active in his children's lives. He's helping raise them. So, yes, if he doesn't see the problem, it's because he's taking care of business in his own home. He's still got a wedding ring on. He's got kids at home. He's still married. Maybe he found a good one, right? Sounds like he found a good one. What he's not identifying is what Andrew's talking about. 50% of kids are being raised by single mothers, and they have no masculine people in their lives. They're raised by single moms in a school system of women being fed feminist bullshit. Then they go turn on the movies and it's about strong, empowered females, and every bad guy is the white guy, the middle-aged white guy. And then they turn on TV and it's the same thing. And then every commercial, it's the same thing. Eventually, men get tired of feeling vilified. These young men are tired of being blamed and tired of feeling like they're the villains of the world. And finally, Finally, they come across the loudest voice that takes up this space.
How do we protect young men from the easy access at the moment there is to people like Tate? I mean, how do you actually put a ring fence around them so that you can tackle exactly what you just said, but they're not also being dragged into that world?
It's tough because they're growing up in a world we never grew up in, Piers. We didn't grow up with the internet. We didn't grow up with Bumble, Tinder, Instagram, Facebook.
No, I was taught how to treat women by my mother, my grandmother.
Open the door,
my
right?
Aunts,
Open the door.
A lot of strong women in my family, very strong women, and they would just take no crap from the men. So that's the environment.
Absolutely.
Oh, there you go, Pierce. There you go, Pierce. The men in your life were controlled by the women. These women would take no crap from the men. That is feminism. When I was a young man, when many of you were young men, if you're, 40, 50, 60 years old, you wouldn't have been gravitating towards the Andrew Tates of the world, because we didn't need the Andrew Tates of the world. We had men in our lives. We had strong masculine role models on TV, in the movies, in government, in our school systems. I'll tell you what, my gym teacher, you didn't mess with that dude. My football coach, my baseball coach, same thing. My coaches were very masculine men. My father, my grandfather were masculine men. My uncle was a masculine man. Now, did the women still lead part of the household? Yes. Get out of my kitchen, said my mother while she was cooking. Get out of my kitchen, I'm cooking. My father called it my mother's kitchen. It was our parents' house. It was my mother's kitchen. It was go down to your father's garage. Each person was in charge of a segment of the home. Mother's laundry room, mother's kitchen. That's literally what my parents called it. My father's garage, my father's bathroom. My mother and father did not share a bathroom. There were two bathrooms on the main floor. My father and I used one. My sister and my mother used another. We had separate areas. We had separate things we were in charge of in my family. And so did my grandmother and grandfather. My grandmother ran the kitchen. My grandfather ran everything else, except the laundry room. We had these role models. There were lines of men's and women's responsibilities. That's why I learned how to change oil on a car and change a flat tire and charge a battery, and my sister learned how to do laundry. Now, as an adult, we learn various other things, but the roles changed through time. Why? Because women demanded it with feminism. And you notice they're not going back to the root cause of what is ailing young men. What are young men unhappy about? That's the real question. That's what we need to answer. Why aren't men getting role models when they're young? And instead, you're waiting till the problem is already developed when young men are in their teens and they're looking for answers and they find Andrew Tate. That you notice none of them are looking for the root cause. They're looking for the Band-Aid to put on the arterial wound. It's too late by then.
I grew up in.
Absolutely. So how do we insulate our children from this? By having conversations, putting parameters around the social media aspects of life and having the conversations at home. Hey son, hey daughter, this is what you're going to see out there in the real world. This is what you're going to see on the internet. If you see something like this, that is not how a true man is supposed to act. And hey, that's not how a real man is supposed to treat you.
Right. So,
but if that message is coming from a woman, he's already heard it. So yes, he has the right answers for his household, but he doesn't have the right answers for the 50 or 60% of single mothers.
We have to have the conversations.
Yeah. Andrew, do you intrinsically disagree with what you've just heard?
Yeah, I do. I think, again, all of this is always the burden on men, burden on men, burden on men. Men need to be doing this.
No, it's a family, Andrew. The family.
Hang on. Let
the
me finish,
family,
man.
Andrew.
Men need to,
husband and wife.
Okay, yeah. So let me back up. Okay, again, men need to do this. Men need to do that. What I'm talking about is what duties do women have in society? What are the actual women's duties towards men? Everybody is raised from the time they're kids how we're supposed to treat women. We all know how to treat women. We never talk about how men are supposed to be treated. That's almost never discussed, especially by how women are supposed to treat men, what their duties in society are. This has been completely dispelled. Guys like Tate have risen because Christianity itself has become a feminized religion, especially the Protestant sects has become completely feminized. And it didn't used to punish masculinity at all. And now it does. And so where's the alternative? Where's the spiritual alternative? It's nowhere. And we need to get back to this fundamental question of what even is misogyny? Because I don't think that men kicking the crap out of each other, being brutes, you know, insulting each other, hazing each other, even bullying each other is misogyny. Not only do I not think it's misogyny, I think it's perfectly healthy.
Yeah, but I don't think that's misogyny.
Well-adjusted.
Is that the argument?
That is not misogyny.
Well, no, hang on.
Wait,
How women see this is totally
misogyny is where you have a hatred or, you know, whatever you want to phrase it, towards women. It's not about men treating men.
Sorry, toxic masculinity is what I'm referencing here. And toxic masculinity is what they're claiming leads to misogyny. So what I'm talking about is these are all masculine traits. There's nothing wrong with them, right? When you're talking about misogyny itself, I want to know what that even is. Is it just asserting yourself to women, telling women no, telling them no, that's bullshit?
No, I would say it's okay. Let me answer you.
You're saying stupid things.
Andrew Tate says he's quite open about it.
Do you see what I keep saying? Andrew Tate, but Andrew Tate, Andrew fucking Tate. That's not what we're talking about. Every time now, to people like Piers and everybody else, when you say, well, men's issues and masculinity, and well, Andrew Tate, who cares? Andrew Tate is one segment of this, and it's the most popular, but it's not getting to the root cause of the issue. And everybody keeps running like their hair's on fire, talking about Andrew Tate, instead of properly, like Andrew's trying to do, talking about the root cause. The root cause and those problems that come with it equal Andrew Tate. Not Andrew Tate equals problem. Everybody keeps getting this backwards except the men that are in these men's communities. They're the only ones that understand what's going on. And everybody else just keeps running to the end. You know where this comes from? Black kids and black people commit more crime than whites per capita. This is a statistic. It's true. Okay, well, we need to not arrest black people. That's not how this works. Well, we need to fudge the FBI numbers. That's not how this works. We need to get black people to commit less crime. Okay, now we're on to something. How do we do that? We need to find out why they commit more crime. Good. Now we're in a right direction. We need to find out why they're not getting the right message at home. Great. What's going on then? There's not 73% or whatever it is of young black men are raised by single mothers.
Ding, ding, ding. What do we have for her, Johnny?
Okay, now we got the root cause. Why are there not as many black men involved in the kids' lives? Why are they seemingly trapped in a poor education system, in a bad, poor neighborhood, without fathers in their lives? We get all the way back down to it, and what do we find? There's no masculine men in their lives. There's no strong male role models in their lives. And so maybe this, at the end of that, is we have too many black people in jail. We have too many young black men in jail. We have too many young black men causing crime. What's the beginning problem? No positive male role models. No strong men in the home. High single motherhood. High divorce rate. High whatever. High promiscuity. High men not staying around in the kids' lives. Whatever. But you got to get back to the root cause. This is the same thing, just a different outcome. So when these kids have good enough families or they come from a good enough background, at least, that maybe they're not going down the same road, but the end road is not enough masculinity, not enough strong men, not enough role models. And so their end is crime. Maybe it's getting into other problems, but it's also finding people like Andrew Tate. And so their answer is, well, hide. Make Andrew Tate censored so young men can't find Andrew Tate. That's the same as, well, young, and again, I'm not picking on the black community, but there are statistics that explain this stuff. Hey, young black men are using, illicit substances, and they're breaking into businesses and stealing things. Instead of finding out what's going on to cause young black men to be in such a bad position in life, let's put bars on the windows of convenience stores. Let's arrest them for minor crimes and keep them detained. 3-strike laws, whatever. Instead of putting the bars on the windows to protect the business, rewind all the way back to why young men are struggling in the first place. All of this has to do with family. And that's what Andrew mentions here, Christianity, bringing back religion, bringing back, and it doesn't mean that Christianity is the right message, but bringing back the message of Christianity and family and traditional roles. All those answers are met with, yeah, but Andrew Tate, well, how do we, Andrew Tate, it's so bloody tiring.
Women should stay at home. They shouldn't go out to work. They should do what he tells them. He's the king of the castle in his house, blah, 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 blah. That is misogyny, isn't it? You know, I've got a daughter.
See, he did it again. Misogyny is hate against women. Let me rewind this and play this again. Misogyny is hating women.
Says he's quite open about it. Women should stay at home. They shouldn't go out to work. They should do what he tells them. He's the king of the castle in his house, blah, 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 blah. That is misogyny.
Only to a feminist. Only to a feminist is that misogyny. To a man, if you were to say, would you rather have your wife working or be a stay-at-home mom with your children? Stay-at-home mom. I'll work. I'll work double shifts. I'll work extra time. I'll work overtime. Just please stay at home with the children because I don't want them with an unknown babysitter. I don't want them in a school system that I don't trust. I want them learning from you and me, our family, you, my wife. I don't want them eating poison from the fast food places. I want you to be at home cooking for them. Okay, so the two primary things you want from a man, you expect them to do just because they're a man. She literally said that earlier in this stream. So then when you turn to the man and say, what do you expect of a woman? I want her to raise our children. I want her to be a stay-at-home mom. That's misogyny. Pierce just did it. Pierce just rattled off the feminist line.
Andrew Tate says he's quite open about it. Women should stay at home. They shouldn't go out to work. They should do what he tells them. He's the king of the castle in his house, blah, 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 blah. That is misogyny, isn't it? You know, I've got a daughter. I've got a 13-year-old daughter. I don't want her thinking she can never leave the house. She's somebody's chattel.
See, that's why they use Andrew Tate. Well, Andrew Tate says she can never leave the house. Andrew Tate says that I'm the king of the castle. Andrew Tate says they should be chained to a radiator. Andrew Tate pours boiling water on women. Andrew Tate says that's not, we're not talking about Andrew Tate. We're talking about men's issues. And then Pierce and everybody else says, well, men's issues. Andrew Tate says, Andrew Tate has become the poster child for everything that they say so they can tear it apart.
Never leaving the house. Look, it is true that the world would be a better place if we didn't have it inverted and women did have a natural role at home and that was glorified and that there was government propaganda around the nuclear family and keeping women home. Why do you want to outsource the raising of children to strangers instead of your wife? That's a way better society. Why do you want your best and brightest women forced to go to a workplace instead of the best and brightest women staying at home raising their children? That's a way better system. It's always been a better system.
I guess we're talking freedom of choice.
That's not misogyny.
Women to do anything. It's freedom of choice. It's freedom of choice. I love the fact that my wife's out there working, teaching kids and building adolescence. I love that. I love that. And to your point about what do I get from a woman? I have a home. I have 3 beautiful children. I have communication in the house. And to me, that means more than anything. Like, I don't understand where I'm not saying you're wrong in your world, but to sit there and say to a woman, what do I get out of this woman? That's treating her like an object.
Wait a minute. Hold up. Wait a minute. You just said what you got from your woman. That's not treating her like an object. He says, we have communication. I have a beautiful home. I have 3 children. I have a wife. You got the things you wanted from the woman. And now once your kids are raised and your wife wants to go work, great. But your kids are raised by 2 of you. And then he uses that and says, well, I don't think she should be a slave. So if your wife has the children and then she decides to work right away and those kids go to daycare all day long, and then she comes home and a nanny takes care of the kids, and she uses her paycheck to do that. And in the meantime, she's working on her job. Are you okay with that? With your children basically being raised by strangers all day long? No, of course not. See, he got what he wanted from his wife. And then he's like, you can go do what you want to now that our children are getting older and you're not needed as much around the house. You won, you got it. But you raised your kids, dude. That's why it worked. We're talking about the 60 or 70% of kids that don't get that.
One thing I want to play a clip.
Okay, so it's okay to treat men like objects, give them duties,
I
but
don't
you're not
feel
allowed
like
to
an
give
object.
women duties.
I feel respected.
Okay,
in
well,
my
let me
home.
ask you this.
I'm not
How come
angry
it is
about
in the
it.
United States that men can be drafted? Women can't be drafted, but women can vote to send men to war. 18 years old. They're each other in the face with bayonets. Women can vote to send men to war that they then themselves do not have to fight. It's a duty that men have, they do not have. What's the counter duty for women? There's no obligation for women to have children. We're well under replacement rate. It's slated 45% of women will be single in the next 10 years, up to 60% in the next 30. That's the estimates right now. Our replacement rate, we can't even replace our own country's birth rates. That's how low they are. This is what we're seeing as a systemic issue inside of society because nobody will put duties on women.
Go on,
Instead,
James.
you just
This is my point. The gay guys, well, maybe it's men like you. The men that don't want to be controlled by women. Men that don't want to protect, serve, and provide without getting anything in return. And the gay guy, who's probably never kissed a woman in the world, is going to tell another guy, well, here's what you need from women. Really? Really? Is that what we're doing? You notice everybody's laughing at the one guy who has his finger on the pulse. And the smug ones are a gay dude that doesn't even like women, a woman that doesn't understand what men need, and a guy that got everything right. And none of them can look at a man that says, A, you're gay, you don't even like women. B, you're a woman, you don't know what men want. And C, you won at life, dude, but your experience is not 70% of men's experience. And they're all harshing on the guy that actually has his finger on the pulse of what young men care about. And when he tries to talk about it, they're like, well, we're not going to listen to you. But Andrew Tate, it's incredible.
It's men like you that are making that happen. Maybe you're the problem.
Rate is low.
Yeah,
it's crazy to me as well that you were just saying.
Don't talk over each other. Let James speak.
I can't understand why you are sat there confidently thinking of yourself as a victim constantly. You have a platform and you're sat here like, I'm a victim. What are women doing for me? What happened in your childhood that has made you so traumatized as an adult that you cannot stand women succeeding? I'm so confused. I feel like the problem is not, and actually maybe this is our fault. Maybe this is the left's fault. Maybe this is modern society's fault for leaving people like you behind. But genuinely, we do not hate men, and toxic masculinity has been thrown around a lot. Ultimately, some of what you're saying is toxic, but that's not because you're a man. That's because you're an idiot.
Okay, so now he's just, see, the name calling. The name calling gets nowhere. You're an idiot. Okay, how does that argue with my point? Well, you're toxic. You're just a toxic, misogynist, butthurt idiot. Who hurt you? That's literally what this guy did. Okay, that aside, argue against my point. They can't. Andrew's saying what young men want, what young men need, and everybody is fighting him. That's what causes Andrew Tate. This panel right here, minus Andrew, is what causes Andrew Tate.
All right.
Okay. So just to give you a quick rejoinder here. Again, didn't contend with a single argument I made. You just said, why are you acting like a victim? While you're here talking about how women are victims.
You're not contending with arguments that other people make.
It's wild to me. It's so wild to me.
You know, this is Piers' show.
Let me go to Tommy. Tommy, I want to play you a clip. This is from a show called Newsnight on the BBC in the UK, where the host Victoria Derbyshire had a panel of young men on and asked them, when was the last time you cried? Let's watch this.
When was the last time you cried?
Honestly, the last time I cried, I couldn't tell you.
Same with Leo, I can't really remember the last time that I cried fully.
A lot of times I feel emotion and I look at myself, why can't I cry? We're told to suppress our emotions.
I feel like to guys, we may be treated a certain way that evokes an idea that we have to be extremely strong and upfront and here as a man.
All right, the rest of this gets on to about men crying and things like that. And there's no use us continuing down that road. So what does this boil down to? And I'll read your super chat or your live tips here in a second. What does this boil down to? Everybody looks at the world through their eyes. Pierce looks at it and he admits, well, the women wouldn't put up with that in my family, and women were this. Okay, you were raised by strong women. You think you're a strong man, but you're not. If the shit hit the fan, Pierce wouldn't be there to play. The guy in the black shirt here in the corner, that dude, I would say he's a real man. I'd say he'd step up. He could even be former military or former cop. He looks to be in good shape. He has masculinity done right. Do you know what also he has to go along with his masculinity? A woman that appreciated it. A woman that stayed married to him. A woman that gave him children. A woman that was a mom up until the kids were old enough. And guess what? Out of all of them, he won. He's like, my kids are fine. My kids don't go down this road. Yes, because you're there. What about Tommy? I don't think she has any kids. She didn't show up with her V card. She married a baseball player, athlete with money, and he's a provider and a protector. And what does he get in return? Nothing. He deserves nothing. That's out of Tommy's own mouth. So expect their divorce anytime soon. The gay guy, who cares what he wants? He's neither masculine nor involved with women. So he's just like, he's a mole on this conversation. He's a freckle on a bull's ass when it comes to this conversation. Andrew Tate, well, he's the go-to default bad guy. Whenever we need to talk about men's issues or young men's issues, that leads to them following Andrew Tate. That leads to all the bad things. At no point did anyone in this whole panel really address young men's issues except one man, Wilson. That's the only guy that did, because he is connected with this content. He's connected with young men. He understands because he reads the comments. He goes on whatever podcast. He hears the super live tips or whatever you want to call them. He gets, I'm sure, emails. He understands. And ironically, the only man that understands what young men are going through, because he hears from young men and he makes content for young men and he discusses this stuff, the only guy that actually understands what's going on had everybody attacking him and everybody yelling at him and everybody calling him names. Andrew Tate doesn't cause the problems. Andrew Tate is the answer. And the people that cause the problems are the people on this panel, obviously, minus Mr. Wilson. It's the people on these panels. Because the only masculine male role model that's probably a father, I don't know if Andrew Wilson's a father. He might be. And so if he is, I don't mean to leave him out of this exclusion. The only man that actually has any understanding, other than Andrew, that's done everything right is the father who raised his kids, whose wife stayed with him, who has a home, and she was probably the caregiver to the children when they were young. And he's like, well, here's how we need to handle this. Yes, you have all the right answers because you got it right and you won. But at no point did he ever think, outside of my family, what do we need to do? He can't see beyond the borders of his own situation. And that's what happens so much in society today. Those young men are left rudderless, directionless, no masculinity. And then they find Andrew Tate, or they find Andrew Wilson, or they find myself, or the hundreds, if not thousands of other men's channels out there, and they say, okay, this resonates with me. And then on the back end of that, do they hear a positive message? My message isn't about positively finding the right woman or dating. My message is about having a happy life without a woman. Maybe you'll find one, great. But my message is being happy without a woman at all. That's my message. Other guys teach you how to date women and how to find wives and how to be successful in a marriage. Other guys tell you Andrew Tate's way. There's so many different outcomes. But young men come to this content in the beginning because something left a very large gaping hole in their lives. And no one is having a discussion about what causes that hole, whether it's for young men or for older men. No one talks about what caused these problems in your life. And when you look at the base of it, for many men, it's not all women. It's not necessarily even women. It's Bad women. Bad women broke my heart. Bad women cheated on me. Bad women divorced me and took my kids away from me. Bad women raised me. Bad women were my teachers. I didn't have good men that related with me as a man on how to navigate this. So then young men turn into bad young men, confused older men, lost men, whatever. But we got to go back to the root cause of the problem. And they never, ever do. They jump to the end, start saying misogyny and throw Band-Aids on this. And how do we hide the Andrew Tates of the world? And how do we force these men to look at the world through a feminist view? And notice nobody addressed when Andrew brought up family and what are women bringing to the table. And here's what young men want, or here's what a lot of men want. Nobody ever answered any of his questions other than, well, just be a man. Just be a protector and a provider and expect nothing. His simple answer of what do men get out of this? Not one person on this panel answered him with a real choice. And that's why so many men say, it's not for me, man. I'm not going to give myself up for all these reasons. I'm not going to sacrifice. If women refuse to listen to my needs as a man and my expectations, then we're just going to stay out of the game. That's what you get. But don't blame us. All we did is tell you what we need, and you said no. That's where we are.